Let's say that you have already your first CSS code, but how do you actually add it to your web pages? There are 3 different ways to add CSS. In today's video, we will quickly break them down and explain why understanding all 3 is really important. The most popular way of connecting CSS inside the HTML files are definitely external stylesheet. As you can see on the screen, here in that example, we are using href element to connect index.html to the closest style CSS file. So the style CSS that is in the same directory as index.html. So as you could probably guess, here inside of the style CSS, if you're gonna follow that exact file, we're gonna see all of the styling connected to this HTML that is actually working here and make changes on the actual page. Even if those CSS properties are not exactly inside of index.html element, because of a link tag, they're actually connected together. So right now, if you're gonna change a background color, for example, to the red, it will change. This gives you a great separation of concerns. So HTML is responsible for a structure of a page and CSS for a styling. In most CSS courses, this is definitely the way to go if we are talking about how to actually connect styling to the HTML file. But please remember that this is not the only option. And actually there are different ones that maybe not gonna be the best in this particular scenario when we are doing just HTML and CSS, but in the future when, for example, you're gonna work with frameworks, there is a chance that you're gonna end up with a different approach. The second approach is with inline styles. As you can see on the screen, styles that we are separated from HTML in a previous approach now are connected with HTML in the same file. So we can change the background color directly from the HTML tag. Even if inline styles are not really popular way of styling these days, in modern programming there are CSS frameworks like Tailwind CSS that are using slightly similar way of styling compared to inline. Here's the key difference. Tailwind uses utility classes, small single-purpose CSS classes that you combine directly in your HTML. So instead of writing style display flex, you write class flex. Although inline styles and Tailwind are different under the hood, the workflow feels similar. You are adding styles directly in your HTML. So when you encounter Tailwind in the future, this way of thinking will already feel natural to you. Last but not least is the internal styling. Instead of putting CSS directly on elements, we put it inside a style tag in the head section of our HTML. Notice how the CSS is now separated from the HTML content. We can reuse styles within the same page by using classes. This option, so having HTML, CSS and logic all in one file, is actually how modern frameworks like React or Vue work. In these frameworks, you can create components that contain everything in one place: the markup, the styles, and the JavaScript. So while internal style sheets aren't common in traditional websites, this all-in-one philosophy is very much alive in modern development. To recap, there are 3 ways to add CSS to your HTML. Inline with a style inside of HTML tag and attribute connected to that. Similar approach is used in modern CSS frameworks like Tailwind CSS with utility classes, but on that we're gonna have a separate lesson. Internal with a style in a head tag of HTML elements. Really popular approach in the modern JS frameworks like React or Vue, but that's gonna be a really long journey to get to that. But please keep in mind that something like this exists. And external when we are using HTML tag link to connect CSS from a different file to our index.html file. And that approach we're gonna use mostly, or actually we're gonna use only that approach in this course. But of course, as I mentioned, please don't forget about inline and internal styling, because those are gonna be definitely something that you're gonna come across in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching and see you in the next episode.